Okay, you are live.
Hi, everybody. We're live at Hearst Castle. I am Andrew, and we're here at one of California's great state parks, state historic monument, Hearst Castle. It's looking very good today in the sunshine. Looks like we're going to have good weather here today, guys. But we are going to be discussing the art and architecture of Hearst Castle today, and we're going to do kind of a deep dive on our very cool Hearst Castle model. I don't want to spoil the surprise, but we're going to be showing you a very intricate model and kind of explore the rooms within the house. Now, this is always a good place to start a tour at Hearst Castle. If you've never been here before, I wanted to show you that little statue right over here. Actually, it's 4 statues from ancient Egypt. That's Sekhmet, the oldest object at Hearst Castle. And this is an example of our art collection. We are a state historic monument. We're also an art museum. And if you've never been to an art museum before, well, you're in for a treat, because we're going to show you a lot of the collection of William Randolph Hearst, the famous newspaper mogul. A mogul was a businessman that owned many things. So he owned newspapers, magazines, radio stations, even a movie studio. And when he was producing movies, he would bring his movie star friends here to his ranch house. That's what he called this place. Pretty good for a ranch, wouldn't you say? But when you were a guest here at Hearst Castle, you were treated to the art collection as well as the splendid architecture. So let's get a closer look at Sekhmet. The bell towers above. Yeah, there she is. She's a beauty, that Sekhmet. She's over 3,000 years old and looking pretty good. 4 statues that came from ancient Egypt. The oldest is on the right here. This is a lion's head, and Sekhmet takes the lioness form very often. She has the body of a woman, but the head of a lion. And on this particular lion's head, you're going to see the sun disk of Ra, the sun god. That was her father. So Sekhmet is often depicted with this sun disk above her head to let you know who her dad is. He was kind of a big deal in ancient Egypt. Ra is in charge of the sun, but Sekhmet was like his bodyguard. So she was kind of the fierce warrior protector of Ra. And this particular carving is over 3,500 years old. That's incredible. So yeah, we're going to show you a lot of examples of ancient art. We're going to see things that are thousands of years old. We're going to see furniture that's hundreds of years old. And a lot of the features, the architecture of the house is 100 years old, because this is the 100th anniversary of the breaking of ground here at Hearst Castle. 1920 is when they broke ground on the construction project. And that project lasted 28 years. Quite a project. Maybe you like to build at home. Maybe you play with Legos. Maybe you play Minecraft. Imagine building something, like working on a model for 28 years. Gosh, that would be quite a project, wouldn't it? Well, we're going to get a little closer to this house. The big house is what they called it, La Casa Grande. And we're going to tell you what's going on here with this architecture. It's pretty fancy. It's very Mediterranean. The Mediterranean Sea that separates Europe from Africa. Well, a lot of the architecture here is inspired by the Mediterranean world. Oh boy, there's the model I was telling you about. And there's my good friend, Mike.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Mike Davis, what's going on here?
Hey, Andrew. Well, what I have here, I have a scale model of the big house behind me. And we're going to talk about scale in just a second because it's kind of hard to visualize something like that behind me during construction. The building behind me, that's Mr. Hearst's home. It was a media mogul, but that building behind me is 68,500 square feet.
Wow.
There is 115 total rooms. You have 38 bedrooms, 42 bathrooms. But I'm going to put that in perspective. My house that I have is 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, about 1,400 square feet. 49 of my homes would fit in this building right here, which is pretty amazing. So this, when I talk about a scale model, I had a good friend of mine, his name was DeRoy Jensen, and he made this model to make it easier to talk about how big this building actually is. And with his model that he made, 1/16 of an inch, if I took out a tape measure, like what I have here in my pocket, if I can get this out.
Don't drop it, Mike.
There we go. So 1/16 of an inch equals a foot. So 1 inch of this model represents 16 feet. So if I put a tape measure here, it went like that to that. From here to here is roughly 16 feet.
That's amazing.
It really, really is. Because I heard Andrew talking about that this was the 100th anniversary of the castle. And think back 100 years ago, they didn't have technology like we had today. For example, right now, we couldn't do what we're doing today 100 years ago. So sometimes what the architect or the designer would do would make drawings like blueprints or actually make models like this to help their client kind of visualize exactly what they're building up here. Because something like this is hard, really hard for me to visualize up here on the hilltop. It really, really is. So these models really help with that. Andrew and I were talking early today about why, when you look at the model, there's different wings on this.
Yeah, tell me about these wings of the house. They're very interesting. So there's a north wing,
which is on this side,
and then a south wing
here. Well, it's interesting because Mr. Hearst's architect, her name was Julia Morgan. She was an amazing individual, but she often joked that her client, William Randolph Hearst, tended to change his mind a bit. So originally with construction, it was only going to be this center portion right here. And then, of course, he changed his mind and he decided, you know what, I might have some guests come up. So on this side here, the south wing, this is where the kitchen and the pantry and some of the workers would stay in some of these buildings here.
Yeah, you got to have a kitchen.
Heck yeah. So if I lift this up like this, you can see where the kitchen and the pantry is.
Wow. That's amazing.
It really is.
Now, what about the other side of the house? What's this north wing all about?
The north wing is really neat because Mr. Hearst called it the entertainment wing of the house. And he had a billiard room here. He had a movie theater.
A movie theater?
A movie theater. They play first-run movies here. And he even had a barber shop and a dentist office. I don't know a dentist office in an entertainment wing of the house, but he did have one of those.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, there's 115 total rooms here.
So what's in the bell towers?
The bell towers are really neat because they're about 137 feet to the top. And each tower has 18 bells that I don't know if Andrew can zoom in on that. And underneath the bell towers, they had water storage. But underneath the water storage, you see those windows? That's called the celestial suite. And one of the guests that came up said, that those rooms kind of resembled what she said was a jeweled case. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this bell tower up
Mm-hmm.
and kind of show you what those rooms look like.
Okay, this
We
is
had one on each
cool.
side.
So somebody got to stay in the bell towers.
That's right.
That's incredible. I'm going to find a picture of what these rooms looked like on the inside, just to give you an idea. This is what your room would have been like. You see the sun shining through? Yeah. So it's a very bright room because you're being illuminated by the sunlight. And it does kind of give you the feeling like you're sleeping in a jewel box. That's a great description of it, I think. I've always liked that story. Let's see. Wow. That gives you a great picture of the celestial suite. And that would be a very special room that you would get to stay in.
Really would.
I think only Mr. Hearst's very closest friends would get that opportunity. So what about Mr. Hearst's suite? Was that on the 3rd floor of the house?
Mr. Hearst suite was on the 3rd floor. And what I'm going to show you right now, I'm going to show you where his study would be. So I'm going to lift this up.
Oh my gosh.
And there's his study.
Oh my gosh.
And I'll lift this part up.
That is a huge room. Okay, and then we've got more bedrooms in the towers.
And this is where Mr. Hearst would stay.
That's excellent. I think I have a picture of what that study looked like, because it's one of the most amazing rooms in the house. And you only really get to see this study when you take an upstairs tour. Check that out, guys. That's called the Gothic study. So you see Gothic architecture inside the house, outside of the house. And what does Gothic even mean, Mike? That's kind of strange. Why would you build your house like that?
Gothic, it's an architectural style. And what I like to tell people, Gothic in nature, it tends to draw your eyes upwards. So I want you to think about like two hands praying, okay? And it's called the OG arch. And it tends to draw your eyes upwards, all right? And you go upwards versus Renaissance, which is a different type of style. But I think you'll be learning about that in a little bit.
It's interesting because the house, it kind of looks like a church, doesn't it?
Does. It really does.
And I know that when they were building, particularly those bell towers, they were being inspired by a church in Spain. Isn't that right, Mike?
That's correct. It was called the Santa Maria la Mayor in Ronda, Spain. But that church only had one tower.
I got a picture of it right here. Check it out, guys. So they found a church with one bell tower, but why would they add a second bell tower when they're building La Casa Grande? That's kind of interesting.
It really is. And I guess the word I would like to use for that is symmetry. And symmetry was very important with Mr. Hearst and Julia Morgan. So instead of just one tower, they put the second tower in. So oftentimes what you can do, you could draw a line right down the center, and what you see on the left side, you're going to see on the right side as well.
It's like a mirror image.
That is exactly right.
That's amazing, Mike.
And you know, the Santa Maria la Mayor, that was a good influence. But if you're from California, there's a mission down in Santa Barbara.
Ooh, I've been there.
Yeah, and that mission, or this kind of really resembles that mission in Santa Barbara. So that was yet another inspiration that was drawn for construction of Casa Grande.
That's so cool. Yeah, the house, it looks like it's from another time period, but really it's from the 20th century, isn't it?
They started in 1919, and it went on till 1947, 1948.
So underneath this facade, this Gothic architecture, what is the true nature of the building?
The true nature of the building, actually the best way to do this would be to start from the bottom.
Oh
and
my
then
gosh.
work our way up. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to lift this model up,
Be careful.
because if you have something this big, you got to have a
Whoa.
foundation. So I'm
Whoa,
going to
this is
lift this up.
crazy. I didn't know you could do this.
Yeah. So I'm going to set this over here.
Wow, guys. Did you see that? Mike is really strong.
I had my Wheaties today. So, but this is earthquake country. And Julia Morgan, the architect, was well aware of earthquakes. And so when you have a building that big, you have to have a foundation or a base. Just like if you do sports, your coach is always going to say, you need a good foundation, you need a good base, you need to be strong. And this was like that. And so if you look down in the basements, these are extremely strong footings and bases. So that building would fit on that. And they used steel and concrete mixed together for earthquakes and fires. And if you've never been in an earthquake, they're kind of scary. We had one here, December 22nd, 2003. It was 6.5 on the Richter scale.
That's a big one.
That is big. The bells in the tower that Andrew showed you actually rang a little bit. And the state found two things: zero structural damage to these buildings, and we exceeded earthquake retrofit standards of 2003.
How can that be? That's
It
incredible.
really is. And this was built 100 years ago. So it's really amazing. Behind that facade that Andrew showed you is concrete and steel. And it's good for earthquakes and fires. And they even thought of that in the basements down here with fires. You see how some of these have partitions? Like over here, you have vaults.
Oh, yes.
So if you had a fire in vault 2, it's going to stay there. It's not going anywhere else.
So what would they keep down in those vaults?
Down in the vaults, oh gosh, I can tell you what we have down there today. We have some of the art that Mr. Hearst had. He has some paintings down there, some of the even piano scrolls for the player pianos. We have those down there, and tapestries and a whole bunch of other things.
Gosh.
It's really, really amazing. He had even I'm hoping that Andrew might show you the movie theater later on.
Well, don't give away the surprise.
Yeah, I won't say anything.
That's my favorite room.
Okay, so even the movie screen could be lowered down there. So there's all sorts of storage down there. You had lockers over here. So they utilize just about every space they could up here.
Gosh, that's amazing. Now I want to see the house. We've talked so much about the model. How about we go inside?
That will be great. You guys, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike. That was amazing.
You got it. Take care, you guys. Bye-bye.
Have fun.
All right.
So there you have it, the model of Hearst Castle. That is an incredible tool for understanding this structure, this complex building with so many rooms. There's so many features to it. But now we want to show you what it looks like on the inside. This is the main door of La Casa Grande. It's a Spanish gate. That's about 500 years old. And a lot of the objects here are from that time period, 500 years ago, the Spanish Renaissance. If we get a closer look at that gate, we're going to see Mr. Hearst's favorite building material. Maybe you remembered when we were discussing all the gold here at Hearst Castle. Well, this is a great example of gold leafing. Yep, a very thin layer of gold on an old Spanish gate. Beautiful. Now, we don't get to use this front door anymore, so we're going to use the side entrance of the house. And we're going to see what that concrete really looks like on the inside. Here's a good view of the backyard, Santa Lucia mountain range. The fog is starting to burn off. I think by the time we get outside of the house, we're going to have clear views in all directions. So we'll step in for a minute. This wall is Utah limestone. And the workers here, they scored it. That means like they put these little lines in the facade. Facade kind of means it's like a face of the house. And they wanted that limestone facade to look like blocks, giant blocks you would find at a cathedral or a castle. But below the limestone is that steel reinforced concrete that Mike was just talking about. That earthquake safe and fireproof structure. There it is, 20th century concrete. So you see, the house really is a modern 20th century high rise. Incredible. Now, because there's so much concrete in the house, sometimes we do lose our signal. So I'm going to step inside into the living room. I'll set the camera down and hopefully our picture will remain. Okay. Are you guys still with me? Can you hear me? Oh gosh, we are in Hearst Castle right now. If you can't see the footage, I hope you could hear my voice. There's the gate, the front door. Mr. Hearst's guests would have walked right through that 500-year-old gate, and they would have stepped into the Grand Assembly Room. It's an incredible space here at Hearst Castle, the Assembly Room. It really feels like a palace, an art museum, maybe a church. But this is where Mr. Hearst would entertain his friends. He would hold parties here in the assembly room. There's a lot of funny stories about those parties. At one point, they had ping pong tables set up in here. Imagine playing ping pong in a space like this. Now, I mentioned the art. And what do you think of if you've ever been to an art museum? What are some of the objects that you get to see in a museum? Maybe you think of paintings. Maybe you think of sculptures. Well, everything here at Hearst Castle is art. Certainly the paintings, but we have furniture that's hundreds of years old. We have a fireplace, and this fireplace is a one of a kind. It came from France. It was featured at a chateau, a very fancy mansion in France, and it's huge. Do you guys want to see how big this fireplace is? Well, I'm about 6 feet tall, but I'm going to go stand right in front of it, and you're going to get a true idea of how big this fireplace really is. See, it's massive. It would take 3 of me to touch the top of that fireplace. Gosh, did you guys ever think that a fireplace could be a work of art? Well, what about a ceiling? Mr. Hearst collected everything. And ceilings, well, that's a big part of the story here at Hearst Castle, because almost every room in the house has an antique ceiling imported from Europe. What does antique mean? That's a word that we use a lot here at Hearst Castle. Well, truly an antique is anything that's more than 100 years old. The ceiling, it's like 500 years old. So that certainly qualifies as an antique, I would say. But what do you guys notice about it? What does it look like? When we give school tours here at Hearst Castle, we hear a lot of interesting ideas what the kids think that our ceiling here looks like. It's from Italy, but some people think it looks like a Hershey bar. One kid said it looked like a waffle. I think that's actually a very good description. It does kind of look like a waffle, doesn't it? It's because there's all these little squares, these compartments. Those are the antique panels that Mr. Hearst's craftsmen had to assemble. When the antique arrived here at the house, it came in giant shipping crates. It was shipped from the East Coast or Europe. It came through the Panama Canal and it arrived here at Mr. Hearst's ranch. And his workers, they had to put these ceiling panels together almost like a giant jigsaw puzzle. Are you guys doing jigsaw puzzles with your family right now? Maybe when you're home with your siblings, you might have been doing a lot of jigsaw puzzles, right? Well, actually, that was a very common activity here at Hearst Castle in the 1920s, 100 years ago. Jigsaw puzzles were all the rage. It was a brand new fad. Everyone was getting into it. And then later in the 1930s, there's a board game called Monopoly. Well, that becomes the most common activity here. Everyone talked about the times that they played Monopoly here at Hearst Castle. Now, my friend Mike Davis, he was telling you all about that architecture and engineering. Do you guys know what an architect really is? Maybe you want to be an architect when you grow up. But Mr. Hearst, yes, his architect was Julia Morgan. She was a legend around these parts because not only did she build Hearst Castle, but she was the first female architect in the state of California. I got a picture of Julia Morgan right here. Actually, sorry guys, that's a zebra. I wanted to show you the picture of Julia Morgan feeding Mr. Hearst's pet elephant, not the zebra, the elephant, because guess what? He had a zoo. So the zebra is the most common animal you do see here, even today at the ranch. But his friends, his guests, they would have also got to see a menagerie of exotic animals from Africa, really all over the world. Zebras, elephants, giraffes, lions. And there's Julia Morgan feeding the elephant. The animals were really a main attraction here because if you weren't horseback riding or swimming in one of the two swimming pools, you would probably be spending a lot of time admiring Mr. Hearst's zoo collection. So you see he's collecting art, he's collecting animals, he's collecting everything, guys. We're gonna head down now through the gardens of Hearst Castle. And it's a beautiful day. The gardeners have been very busy up here this summer, keeping the place looking beautiful, pristine. And I think that's the way Mr. Hearst would have liked it. You see, he said that the flowers were as important as the buildings themselves. Well, we got a lot of flowers here right now in front of one of our guest cottages. This is the bungalow known as Casa del Monte, House of the Mountain. And when you were a first-time guest to Hearst Castle, a lot of the first-timers got to stay in this bungalow. It's kind of like your introduction to the ranch. This was the first place that Mr. Hearst stayed during construction. This was the first house to be completed because it's the smallest. So he would camp out in this little bungalow, pretty good for camping, I would say. And later, A lot of his famous friends would stay here. Have you guys ever heard of Winston Churchill? Yes. The Prime Minister of Great Britain. He stayed in this bungalow in 1929 before he became Prime Minister. He had some interesting stories about Mr. Hearst animals. Let's look at the roses. Gorgeous. As I was starting the video here today, I could hear the bees buzzing all over the garden, pollinating our flowers. It's very peaceful up here this time of day. This is a very peaceful place, Hearst Castle. It's a nice place to just stop and smell the roses, enjoy the views. And as you wander through the gardens, you just kind of stumble across surprises. There's something to see around every corner. Well, this is one of the most famous sites at Hearst Castle, the Neptune Pool. There it is. The Neptune Pool in all its glory. So this is a different style of architecture from what we've seen previous. We showed you a lot of influences from medieval Europe, Gothic period, Renaissance period, which came after the Middle Ages. But the European architects and designers, they were always inspired by ancient culture and ancient architecture. And I mentioned the Mediterranean world. Well, probably the most famous example of Mediterranean architecture and style is the Roman style. Is that what this looks like to you guys? Because that's what you're looking at. You're looking at elements from ancient Rome that are about 2,000 years old. Yeah, no kidding. Those columns down there, that little temple facade, they took ancient Roman columns and they were able to piece together marble and granite and put together what looks like a Roman temple. This is incredible. This is an example of what Julia Morgan was capable of. She was so good at combining elements of old and new. And that's really what you see here at the pool. You see, they were designing this in the 1930s. And at that time period in the United States, Roman style architecture, Greco-Roman was all the rage. A lot of government buildings today, you see examples of that architecture. Maybe you've been to Washington, D.C. You could think of the famous monuments in our nation's capital. But even the Capitol in Sacramento, even the City Hall in San Francisco, you'll see these elements. And it kind of makes sense why they would be building in this Roman style fashion in the 1930s. Why would it be such a popular style of architecture? Well, they were trying to recreate this feeling of ancient Rome, ancient Greece, because the government, our style of government in the US came from ancient Greece. Democracy. And it's not hard to imagine yourself standing in Athens or Rome 2,000 years ago. It would have looked something like this. Well, this is kind of like the fantasy version of that. You see those columns across the pool. That's the deep end over there. Those marble columns were designed in the 1930s, so they're about 90 years old. But then, of course, you have the 2,000-year-old columns right there. And could you even tell the difference? Maybe a little bit, but it's almost a trick on the human eye. If you use your imagination, this place can really be like a time machine. It transports you to a different place, to a different century altogether. This is the shallow end here. It's 3.5 feet deep. The diving board used to be on the other side of the pool. That's 10 feet deep over there. And guess what, guys? That fog, it finally burned off. I'm starting to see the ocean. Way down below us is the San Simeon Harbor. You see all those clouds down there? Well, that's the marine layer. And below the clouds is the ranch that once belonged to William Randolph Hearst. And now, today, the family still owns the ranch. But the state of California, we have the beach and also the house. So that's a pretty good deal. We get a twofer there. A pristine California coastline and a glorious monument full of ancient treasures. The fog came back in. Sorry, guys. I got excited there. You know, the weather changes pretty quick up here at Hearst Castle. You have to dress in layers. You don't know if it's going to be hot or cold, and it might be both. I have one last treat for you guys. If we can't see the ocean, let's look back at the architecture. Casa del Sol, House of the Sun. This particular cottage is named for its view of the sunsets every evening. And it is a wonderful example of Renaissance style architecture. Mr. Hearst said that if Americans couldn't make it to Europe, he was going to bring Europe to them. Well, I think mission accomplished in this case. He really did create his own little European village right here on this hilltop. And if you ever get the chance to take a tour at Hearst Castle, maybe you could imagine yourself having a miniature European vacation of your own. That's what it feels like every day that I'm up here. The place really is a time machine. Thanks a lot for joining us here at Hearst Castle. We hope to see you on many more of these virtual web tours. And we're going to have a lot more surprises along the way. So stay tuned, follow us on the web, and keep watching those videos, guys, because we'll keep making them, okay? Thanks a lot. See you next time.